Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. On today's tutorial, I will teach you how to sew the collar and the pink lapel detail on a 3-panel ladies jacket. Hi, my name is Ayo and welcome to 011 Clothing Tutorials. On this channel, I upload DIYs, pattern drafting and sewing tutorials. If you haven't subscribed yet, kindly do so and do not forget to turn on the notification bell so that you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. So now, let's get right into the tutorial. Thank you! This is the front and the side panels of the jacket which I have sewn together. I have also sewn in place the double welt pocket with flap on the front and the side panel pieces. This was done in a separate tutorial. The link to this tutorial will be above and in the description box below. I will move on to the back pieces of the jacket. These are the two back pieces. I will remove the patterns from the fabric. I'll place the two back pieces together like this, right side to right side. I will measure and mark out the 1-inch seam allowance as the center back and the half-inch seam allowance as the upper part of the vent. I will sew the center back in place like this, but I will leave half an inch opening at this end. I will pin the two back pieces together like this. I will go ahead and do the stitching now. This is the half-inch opening that I left at this end. I have sewn the two back pieces together as you can see. I will snip into the corner at this side. I will be careful not to cut through the stitches. I will now go ahead and press open the same allowance as the center back. This is the back piece of the jacket. I will bring out the two front and side panel pieces. I'll place them on the back piece like this, right sides are together. These are the sides that I intend to sew together on the patterns. And as you can see, we have 1-inch seam allowance at these sides. I will measure and mark the 1-inch seam allowance as the two sides. I will pin them in place. I will sew them in place using 1-inch seam allowance. I will go ahead and do the stitching now. I will press open the seam allowances. Next, I will place the front and the back shoulders together, right side to right side. I will sew the shoulders in place using half an inch sewing allowance. I will go ahead and do the stitching. I will press open the seam allowances. These are the collar pieces: the under collar, the top collar, and the collar stand. I will remove the collar patterns from the collar pieces. This stretchy piece is the under collar. I have a pair of the collar stand. One collar stand will be for the under collar, while the other collar stand will be for the top collar. I will measure and mark half an inch seam allowance at the upper part of the collar stand. I will pin the upper parts of the collar stands to the lower parts of the top and under collar pieces, making sure that the middle points match up. I will sew them in place using half an inch sewing allowance. I will go ahead and do the stitching now. I will press open the seam allowances. I will place the two collar pieces together like this, right side to right side. I will mark the middle point at the upper part of the under collar and the top collar. I will measure and mark out the half inch seam allowance on the collar. I will pin the collar pieces in place. I will sew them in place using half an inch sewing allowance. I will go ahead and do the stitching now. Now that I've sewn the collar pieces together, I will reduce the seam allowance at the corners. Then I will turn the collar to the right side. I will press open the seam allowance. This side is the under collar. I will mark it. Using a needle and a thread, I will hand baste the ends of the collar together. The next thing that I'm going to do is to iron the collar. When ironing, the seam line at the upper part and also at the sides of the collar should be pressed inwards towards the under collar side. Recall that when I was drafting the collar patterns, the under collar was a little bit smaller than the top collar. This should be obvious after ironing the collar. Now that I'm done with the ironing of the collar, I will remove the basting stitches. So as to avoid confusion, I will mark the under collar side again. Next, I will pin the collar to the neckline of the main jacket piece. To fix the collar to the neckline of the jacket, I will make use of 3 notch points on the collar. First, I will use the middle notch on the collar and also on the neckline of the jacket. This is the middle notch on the collar and it must align with the center back seam line on the neckline of the jacket. Secondly, I will use the shoulder notch on the collar. These are the shoulder notches on the collar and they must align with the shoulder seam lines on the jacket. Thirdly, there should be collar notches on the lapels of the jacket. These are the collar notches on the lapels of the jacket. And this should be the end points of the collar. The under collar side, which I have already clearly marked, should face down. I'll pin the collar in place, matching all the notch points. Using a needle and thread, I will hand baste the collar in place. I will remove the pins as I baste along. I will sew the collar in place from the main jacket side so as to avoid unwanted pleats after sewing the collar in place. I will measure and mark out the half an inch seam allowance on the neckline of the jacket. I will sew the collar to the neckline of the jacket using half an inch sewing allowance. I will remove the basting stitches. I will notch the neckline where the collar was attached to the neckline so that the collar can relax and lie flat. I will now iron the neckline where the collar was fixed. This is the front facing. I will remove the facing pattern from the facing pieces. I have here two facing pieces. I will bring out the jacket piece. I will place the facing piece on the jacket like this, right side to right side. I will pin the facing in place, matching all the notch points. Using a needle and thread, I will hand baste the facing in place. I will remove the pins as I baste along. I will measure and mark the half an inch seam allowance on the jacket facing like this. At this upper part, the sewing should stop 1 inch before the end of the facing. At this lower part, I will trace up this vertical edge of the main jacket. The sewing should extend beyond this point by 0.5 inch. I will go ahead and do the stitching now. After sewing the facing in place, there should be half an inch sewing allowance at this side for fixing the lining in place later on. Also, at this upper part, there should be about 1 inch allowance that is unsewn, and it will also be used to fix the lining in place later on. Now that the facing has been sewn in place, I will remove the basting stitches. I will notch the lapel at the upper part. I will reduce the seam allowance at the corner and also at the upper part of the lapel. I will turn the lapel to the right side at the upper part. I will snip triangular notches at this curved area at the lower part of the jacket. Then I will turn the lower part of the facing to the right side. I will repeat the exact same thing on this other side as well. Next, I will press open the seam allowance of the facing. This is the waist notch and it is also the break point of the lapel. I will insert a pin at this point. It is the end point of the lapel. When pressing the lapel area, the area above the breakpoint, I will make sure that the seam line rolls outward towards the right side of the jacket by about 1/8 of an inch, and it goes into knotting at the breakpoint. Below the breakpoint, the seam line should be pressed inwards towards the inside of the jacket, also by about 1/8 of an inch. When I drafted the collar patterns, I came down by 3/8 of an inch from the edge of the collar stand. This is because I don't want the seam line of the collar stand to be visible after pressing the lapel in place. This is the collar stand seam line. So I will measure and mark 3/8 of an inch upwards from the collar stand seam line. This is the correct position of the break line. So I will fold back the collar and the lapel at this exact point, and I will press the collar and the lapel in place. I'll repeat the exact same thing on this other side as well. I will give the entire jacket another press like this. So that's it, guys. I'm done with sewing the collar and the lapel of the jacket in place. Stay tuned for my next tutorial. If you find this video helpful, do not forget to give it a thumbs up, drop a comment down below, share this video with your friends who are interested in sewing, and do not forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. See you in my next tutorial. Bye, and thank you so much for watching.